What's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to talk about drugs and mental illness. Now, this is a big field, and I know a lot of people will say, man, like, you'll have somebody who may be bipolar, and they like to smoke weed, stuff like that, or drink. So we're going to get into, what can actually happen, and we're going to get into the mental illness kind of thing. So first of all, when somebody has a chemical imbalance in their head, or in their brain, and they have different neurotransmitter levels, it can have unforeseen side effects when somebody has mental illness. Like if a guy with autism drank a little alcohol and his body couldn't process it, he might find himself drunk longer. He may find himself doing stuff that he would never imagine doing. He may end up finding himself suddenly, in a different situation. All of a sudden, he's like scaring people. He may find himself flying off the handle and getting into something, that he would never imagine himself doing otherwise. And so, like a lot of times people have now found that, when people have a chemical imbalance in their head, they're more likely to become addicted to a less addicting drug, just because it may be like self-medicating to them. And so, like a person with autism may find themselves being hooked on something that another guy uses way more of and doesn't get hooked on. And a person with post-traumatic stress may have recurrent thoughts of recurrent negative thoughts, and they may have a lot of stress coming back on them and have trouble focusing or holding a job sometimes. But then, they may feel that alcohol helps calm them down, but it becomes an addiction, and they develop a tolerance, and then they find that in the long run, makes their problems worse. And so, like, we look at the highway case down in Florida where that guy was acting like a zombie. They thought he was in bath salts and herbal incense. They literally thought that. When they saw the case, he was like, oh my God, he must be on every drug in the book. And then when they looked at his toxicology report, they just found weed. But this man had a history of mental illness, and so he was, the weed pushed him into a psychotic state of mind. He was in an irrational state of mind, and he was not thinking straight. And he was in a stage of psychosis for several days. And so, he should have been on antipsychotics, and he might not have been in that situation. But you will see situations where somebody has bipolar, and, they may have trouble sleeping at night, and so they end up getting hooked on benzodiazepines. If they have that manic tendency, they may also have, maybe problems with alcohol, trying to control the manic too. And, if somebody's more manic, they may get prone to being addicted to depressants. If somebody is prone to depression, they may be more addicted to stimulants like Adderall and cocaine and, sometimes even like really strong, dangerous drugs that can end up getting them, killing them. And so with mental illness, a lot of times when people use drugs, they end up more addicted. They can have unforeseen side effects that would not be normal of an average person using just anybody without the illness using it. But when they have schizophrenia, they may start hearing more voices. They may suddenly get more aggressive and forget themselves. And like a guy with autism that uses a little bit of alcohol may suddenly, find, they lose control of everything, and they suddenly find that, it's basically controlling their life, and it controls them, and they don't see it. And so they may suddenly be seen in a different light by people than they normally would be. And they may find themselves suddenly doing stuff they normally wouldn't do, but because of the autism and everything, it can suddenly be a very dangerous situation for them, because they may be the one person that draws the wrong attention. You may have a guy with autism, it's a party, and he smoked a blunt with somebody, but then a cop comes down to shut down the party. He sees the guy with autism. Okay, sir, I'm going to need you to come over here. How much you had to drink, and they just fit the profile, because somehow the way they look at people, they can quickly find themselves in a different situation. And you could get somebody who has psychosis, and they think, I want to escape from reality, I don't like this, and they use a little bit of weed, but then they start to get hooked on it, and they start to feel like they need it all the time, and it starts to become an addiction, and it can trigger negative behaviors. And there's people who can go into a hospital and then they go out in a week, and then they get into the crowd of friends they were in before, and they get high and they get back in there, and they find themselves in a situation where all of a sudden they're in trouble, and there's times when people can be smoking a lot of weed. It starts to they start to have more anger problems, and they start to have more negative thoughts, and they start to get paranoid, and heavier. They smoke heavier and heavier amounts of it, and then that's when you start to see where people have a negative response, where all of a sudden they're like in an hyper irrational state of mind and not making clear choices, and it's where all of a sudden the drug controls somebody's life, and they're thinking about using it more and more, and it's like self-medicating. And so this is where somebody can use benzodiazepines to fall asleep at night, but then they can't sleep without it, and then they're up till 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. They don't even sleep at night, and they can't. And so this is where mental illness can create a chemical imbalance in the brain that can lead to worse side effects in somebody. And because of the different levels of neurotransmitters and everything, and the way the brain's wired, somebody can have worse reactions with it. So basically, this is my review this is my discussion on mental illness and drugs, and thanks for watching.